Um, I'm Juan, Eleanor. Good to meet you. And Ting Unungan way, Unungan Kuuyux. I'm a contest of Ilarion Merkulieff. Ting Kawalangan Unungan way. Ang Juan. We say Ang Juan, which means hello, my other self. In Unungan, which is my people, the Westerners call us Aleuts, but we don't use that name. That's given to us by our former oppressors. We use Unungan. We've been out in the Bering Sea for over 10,000 years, and we're still there. So I come from a lineage that is very spiritual. Amongst all my people. And I was given the name Kuuyux, which is my traditional name, at 4 years old by the last Kuuyux that was left alive amongst all of my people. And it's given to one person in each lifetime. And it means like an arm extending out from the body, a carrier of ancient knowledge into modern times, a messenger. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, Kuuyux. So Angwan, that's a very beautiful greeting. That hello, my other self, the one that I'm so happy to discover. And listening to you previously, I was really enthralled by what you said about your childhood and your growing up, and your mentor who raised you in this deep, intimate knowledge, which was beyond words. I wonder if you could tell me something about that, your teacher, your mentor through your childhood and adolescence.
Yeah, well, my generation was the last generation that had a fully intact traditional upbringing. And it was quite rich. I lived on an island that's 12 miles long. I don't know how much that is in kilometers, but it's 5 miles wide, very small island. And it's the largest Unungan village in the world. And I lived there with, when I was a child, about 1.2 million northern fur seals and 2.5 million seabirds, 1,000 reindeer, and 500 Unungan people. And it was quite a magical place to be raised. And so I had to spend 2 years with my grandfather at age 4. And I went to work. I did everything with him. I went to work with him. I went to his friends with him. I went hunting with him. It was just quite, and that's so that my grandfather would get to know me and I would get to know my grandfather. And at age 6 or 5, rather, I met my Acha, which is a traditional mentor. And it's not something that is pre-designated. You just meet, the younger person, the older person meet, they know instantly that that's my Acha. So we end up calling each other Acha. And he taught me much of what I know about being a man, about life, about reverence for all life, about sharing, caring, cooperation, the ethics and values of Unungan people. And from age 5 to age 13, that he had me under his wing, he may have said no more than 200 words to me, because words are considered either superfluous or can be dangerous. And the most important aspects of human being, we call ourselves, the literal interpretation is the real human being by the sea. And we have all the groups in Alaska. There are 12 major groups in Alaska. They all mean in their own language, the name for their people is the real human being or the human being. And it's a message from the old to the new about what we must do, which is to become a real human being. And we can talk more about that later. Anyway, under this, the tutelage of my Acha, I learned so much. The adult's responsibility was to create the space for a child to learn, not tell them what to learn, how to learn, or define anything. And so my job was to watch, listen, and learn. And I grew up not asking a single question. I had to figure it out for myself. Mm. And it's ingenious because it allows us to expand out to the maximum of our capability without the interference of another adult. Mm. And in fact, I think it was in Europe someplace, I'm not sure where, a couple of years ago, did a study on children and found that every single child that they had studied was a genius. And they were born geniuses. Mm-hmm. And it's gradually weaned out of them through the adult constrictions. Mm-hmm. And so I never had that. And I'm blessed that my people understood the relationship of a real human being. And for a child, I mean, my mother would tell me, we used to cry when when a baby's born, and then celebrate when they died. And that's because we understand that we are spirit beings in formless form, and when we take into a human form, it's very dense, and it's going to be filled with ups and downs. And so we cry for that child. And then when you die, of course, you're back to your formless form. And that's why we celebrate. And it was quite rich. And I learned a lot, not only from, I had to get to know every component of our village, the men, the women, the children, and the elders. I had to spend equal time with all of them. And the men would teach me the men's ways and hunting and fishing, and the women would teach me women ways and food preparation and all the things that go into the knowledge and understanding of how food is to be prepared. Mm. And also to the elders would take me out to go camping with them every weekend. Mm. I listened to the story hour after hour, year after year from age 5 to age 13. It was quite beautiful. And of course, with my peers, my job was to play. So I would play. It's something that very few children have the opportunity to do today around the world. But I love to watch the seabirds, for example. And 2.5 million seabirds on an island as small as ours, they're all concentrated on the periphery of the island. Mm-hmm. And underneath each cliff might be 10,000 seabirds or more. Mm-hmm. And I used to love watching seabirds. Mm-hmm. And so I would walk out of the village about 3 miles out of the village at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's pitch black. And for a child at 6 years old to do that would be considered child abuse today. But no, it was accepted form of education for us. And so I went out by myself to go underneath the bird cliffs to experience the seabirds because they were so full of life. And so I'd get underneath the cliff and here before sunrise, because I wanted to be there when the birds started rising and collecting. And what they would do is they'd get up and get off the cliff ledge and go around in a circle where they're waiting to collect members of their species before they go out foraging. And I knew this.
Mm.
And so I would go underneath there and the birds would be flying within inches of me. They were not oblivious to me. They knew I was there, but they also knew that I was not harmful.
Mm.
And they really all kinds of species, you know, thick-billed murres, common murres, least auklets, crested auklets, tufted puffins, horned puffins, pelagic cormorants, red-faced cormorant. I mean, you just name it. There were thousands of them and different kinds of species. And they would fly in every which direction in front of the cliff. It's apparent chaos. And so I would watch them and I would just love how alert and alive they were. And I said, I want to be a bird. What's the difference between a bird and a human being? And I said, well, birds don't think. That's the difference between us and them. And I said, well, okay, I want to be a bird. So I'm going to not think. And it took me a couple months, but I got to the point where I could not think or have a single word come through my head for hours. And then that's when the magic happened. When I would go out hunting with the hunters, we'd hunt for stellar sea lion from the shore to water. And they're always in the water in the fall, winter, and springtime. It's too rough during these seasons to be out in the water in a boat. And so we'd hunt from the shore. And we would go out again early in the morning before sunrise, be there at sunrise, and then we might wait a whole day, maybe 7 or 8 hours, for one sea lion to come by. And the men were just simply sitting down on the basalt boulders along the shoreline, watching. They wouldn't talk very much. They weren't very active. They just sat and watched. And that's like 180 degrees of water. We're on an island, you know, and the sea lion could pop up anywhere. And the thing I noticed about the men was by noontime, I'd get sleepy and daydreaming. I'm 6 years old, right? And the men would never get that way. They would always stay alert. And then and so I thought that was magical.
It is.
That they could do that. And then someone would say, there would be like 4 or 5 hunters out there. Someone would say, "Kawakako, sea lion coming." And instantly, all the men would look at one spot in the ocean. Now, mind you, the sea lion could be anywhere in 180 degrees of ocean. But no, they looked at one spot. And they looked so earnestly that I knew there must be a sea lion there. But I look and I look, no sea lion. And no sea lion would appear maybe until 5 or 10 minutes after the sea lion was first, they said the sea lion was coming. And it would pop up in exactly the spot that the men were looking. And I thought, that's magical. Then I learned, or I figured out, that the men learned this from the seabirds, because when I was got to the point of no thought, I said, well, I'm going to try this out hunting. And sure enough, I never got sleepy again. And I could feel the sea lion before it comes. And I would know exactly where it is. And then I apply this to fishing. We fish handline fish for halibut. And on a small boat, you know, a 16-foot skiff. And we'd be fishing and fishing. I could tell when the halibut was near the line. I could tell you when it bit the line, whether or not it's hooked by the lip or the jaw or the side of the body. And I could tell you what size it is. I can tell you whether or not it's male or female. And I can tell you how it's going to fight on the way up. All these things were necessary for men to understand. And in today's world, this is considered feminine information, and that somehow that's bad. But no, the best hunters were the ones that had the strong feminine side. And otherwise, they wouldn't be as successful in getting the animals that they need for food for the family and for the extended family. So that, you know, it affirmed to me the value of this way of not constricting the child by planting in their heads the things that we think they ought to learn. And our people recognize that all children were geniuses, and treated them that way. And so I was very blessed to have that kind of upbringing.
I find it so beautiful the way, you know, what you're saying, and you know, to be 6 years old and to feel the life in this this community of seabirds of all these different species, all these different types, and the sounds. You know, I really love, because I grew up by the ocean in the west of Ireland. I love that sound, you know, the way the whole cliff face rocks are resonating with the voices of the birds.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very few people experience that today, unfortunately. I remember one day when I was out hunting with the hunters, and it was dark. It was before the sun came up, and I heard this strange whistling sound. It seemed to be coming from all over the place, and I couldn't figure out what it was until the day broke and the sky was filled with millions of seabirds. Millions. That's what we were hearing, were the wings that were whistling in the air.
That is the voice of Mother Earth that you're hearing, listening to this in all with this multitude of different voices. And it's just so beautiful. And, you know, I think it's, you know, it's, when you say that you were, you know, the last generation, you know, to have this beautiful upbringing, I feel a kind of personal, I feel that too, because, you know, I grew up really with my grandmother. She was the one, I would say that she was probably what most people would describe as your mother. She was the one I spent most of my time with. And she was the one who told me the stories. You know, I slept in the same bed with her. And I've very, very, you know, when I think of my grandmother, it's of this beautiful presence that was there and who didn't, as you say, tell me what to do, really. She was like we were companions. And that companionship between, you know, the elder and the younger is what, you know, really allows you as a child to be open and to be, you know, as you are, without feeling you're doing wrong things the whole time, which is what happens when you go to school.
Yeah, that's so true. And, you know, I did the same thing. I slept with my grandfather.
Yeah.
And we also have a teaching from the drum, you know, the drum that you hold, and it's circular. And each four corners of the drum has, for one of the things that we use it for is to represent the human being. So there's the infant, the child, the adult, and the elder. And the elder is over on this side, on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And we use that for teaching that the adult, so who's the best one out of this human being to teach the child? It's the elder, because they're the closest to the child. And so the parents are up there on the furthest away, and their role is something totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's a good teaching to remember.
It really is. It really is. And I just on the seabirds, you know, in the ancient Irish Celtic tradition, we call Celtic, which was a merging really of this indigenous spirituality with Christian stories and teachings. There is this incredible now bird sanctuary about 15 kilometers off the west coast of Southern Ireland, where I'm from. And they're basically two jagged pinnacles of rock. And they're about 1,000 feet high, and they come straight up out of the Atlantic Ocean. And even on a calm day, it can be difficult to land. But 1,500 years ago and before that, they were, first of all, a place of indigenous spirituality, and second, a Christian settlement. And the most amazing thing about this is when the monks lived there, there was no church. They did not pray indoors. They did not close themselves away from this huge, openness of the sea and the sky and the birds. And at the time, there would have been whales moving through those waters, and the whole sacred creation, was there all around them. And I found that, when I visited this place, which I really love, and I realized they never built a church because everything was this, church. Yeah.
Yep. I had the same experience in Israel, where I went, last year before the pandemic arrived, and the year before that. And one of the things I was given was a tour of the Holy City, and there and the four sectors of the Holy City, and I was amazed at how much they had reverence for these structures. And then you go out of the Holy City, and you're immediately surrounded by thousands and thousands of stores that are selling religious trinkets. And, I just cried.
Oh, yeah.
Because it used to be that the land was considered the sacred thing. And now it's replaced by buildings. And it used to be the women that took care of the land. And now it's very masculine imbalance all over the world, where the men are the ones that are in control, I guess they call it control, but it's an illusion of control.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's very few people understand, from what I'm able to find out, that they have the same, they understand what you're saying, which is it was a land. Sacred.
And that's not fixed, you see. It's not, well, it isn't a fixed teaching. It's what is emerging all the time in the present moment. And this is this continual relating and relationship. And again, when you say that the finest hunters, they had this deep feminine awareness, this ability to be still and to reopen and listen and receive. When I traveled, as I told you, I traveled with the Yupik and the Chukchi people, and I was the only woman in the skin boats. This was for, long periods of time. I never once felt uncomfortable. I felt this acceptance and respect, very mutual respect, and I never felt uncomfortable. And what when you speak about this attention, this which is completely without unnecessary thinking, and then you can receive all the knowledge that you need in that moment.
Yeah, we call that, that it's information given to us by the womb at the center of the universe.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, and it's a place of creation and creativity. And the identical field of energy is in all women. And this is why women all over the world used to be considered sacred. And amongst my people, it was the women that initiated shamans.
Mm.
Amongst the Iroquois, was the women that chose who headed up the tribe.
Mm.
And so it's a recognition by Indigenous people that we need that place of the feminine, and it has to have equal stature to that of the masculine. And that there's been, according to our stories, there's been a pendulum that swung back and forth between masculine imbalance and feminine imbalance. And it started about 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, the last swing of the pendulum, which was masculine imbalance. And we're still in the middle of this imbalance.
Yeah.
And that the elders are saying that we today have the opportunity for the first time in human history to balance that swing into dead center. That masculine and feminine will be balanced, and that's where they said it is this generation of people that will decide that, and based on their decision, will determine whether or not human beings are going to survive and thrive. Because Mother Earth, she's lived for billions of years; she's going to live for billions more.
Yes.
And it's a question about whether or not we human beings are going to survive. What we call the real human being,
yes,
is, modeled by the 2-year-old child.
Yes.
You look at a 2-year-old child and, they're natural. They don't have the layers that we adults put on. And a 2-year-old child, I was at a Native American gathering of 2,000 or so Native Americans, and we're in a gigantic circle. In the middle of the circle walks a 2-year-old child, buck naked. She wasn't self-conscious, and that's the real human being. And the elders I work with now around the world are saying that we need to restore the knowing about what it is to be a real human being during this time, because it's this generation that's going to decide whether or not we humans are going to survive and thrive. This generation of people around the world are going to decide it. And I make it a pledge to listen to the elders, the spiritual elders. And I have never been guided wrong by them.
Yeah.
And so I know that what they're saying is heartfelt, and it's, they get their information in ways that all of us used to get, but now only a few get. And one of the ways is tapping into the womb at the center of the universe. I asked my elder one time. There was poison that we take out of a plant that is used for whale hunting, and we hunt whales in single hull kayaks, not in large boats. And we don't use harpoons; we use spears. And when the spear tip is tipped with this poison and it hits the whale, it goes only to the heart, doesn't go anywhere else. And it takes 3 days. And during those 3 days, the whale doesn't know it's suffering. And then it dies. And so an anthropologist came to the island one time and asked us, how did you figure this out? Did you watch the animals? Or did you test it yourself, or what? And the elder said, no, we talked to the plants. And they told us, excuse me, And anyway, they told us what to do. And this is stuff that people, so there are a handful of people around the world that can still do that. And we have to clear our minds enough to listen to the heart, because the heart is the recipient of that knowledge and information. And the womb for the women, when women get together in sisterhood and heal themselves from all the traumas and intergenerational traumas, and they can do it very quickly. It's just not like men would take a lifetime sometimes to learn it, but women can do it quickly. And then they can get together in sisterhood and take the energy that they have within themselves and place it on the outside collectively, that only then will something new be created on Mother Earth. Until this happens, everything else is the old regurgitated as the new.
Yes.
Even the state-of-the-art thinking and technologies are the old regurgitated as the new. To
find that communion that, you know, we're speaking of here, I have to drop down out of this thinking mind. I have to go to this deeper place where there is always peace. And then the fear that I have, you know, for the future, because I think, like many people, we live in an atmosphere where there is so much fear now for the, you know, for the future. And then I come into a space without fear, where there is this greater consciousness that holds us all and that tells us what is needed now, what is truly needed.
Exactly. You know, I like to say that it's we humans that created time.
Yes.
And we created time and we slipped out of the present moment.
Yes.
And the present moment can only be found in your heart. And when we left the heart, we left the present moment. And when we left the present moment, we go into guilt, shame, remorse, anger, rage, jealousy, all these things from the past, or fear, which is projection into the future of something that hasn't happened yet. Every place except the proverbial now. And someone once said, I don't know if it was Deepak Chopra or somebody like that, said, you know, the point of power is in the present moment. And it's only in the present moment that our higher power or God or Buddha, whatever we choose to call this great spirit that lives in all things, lives and can be found only in the present moment. And this is how my people lived. They lived where we developed the most densely populated linear mile of shoreline in all of North America for our time, in a place that's very hard to eke out a living. And we didn't even wear footwear during the wintertime in Alaska. We didn't have food storage technologies except for wind. All the other groups had different kinds of food storage technologies. And when I asked my elder on St. Paul, what is this all about? And he says, look at that seabird. Do you think it worries about where it's going to get its food the next day? And of course, the answer is no, that all we do, and our people were indeed that way, where they were present in the moment and in the heart, and the rest is taken care of. And this is something that is called for today, that is going to be very difficult for most people to let go of. And that is planning. How am I going to get my food? How am I going to get money for my expenses? And planning this and planning that, and letting go of the planning is something that well, Don Alejandro, who was the keeper of the day calendar for the Mayans, he and I spent a week together in Canada, And he said, you know, the people that are going to negotiate these times the best are going to be people of the fire, which means people of the heart. And we are asked to become love, not think love, not do love, but become love. And the elders say, you know, we can't offer the world something we don't have. And if we're fighting for peace, we're doing exactly the wrong thing. Because fighting is not the way of love. And you have to become peace. And if you want the wars to stop, you have to be peaceful yourself. You cannot, you know, force it. You can force it temporarily, but you cannot force it over the long term. And that what we do is embody the intention of what it is that we want to see in the world. And that means without thought, just embodied intention. And through that way, we don't react to something that we are concerned about. You know, the climate crisis, the violation of women, the refugee, political corruption, all these things, suicide, murders. There are good people of good heart all over the world trying to stop this thing. And it's in reaction to what it is. And the elder said, we must dream the world that we want to see, not in reaction to anything else. That yes, there are things that we must do to stop this, but don't pour your mental, physical, and spiritual energies into that. Because we're energy beings. And we're not aware that when we pour energy into that, it makes it bigger. It's like adding fuel to the fire. That's why we've been praying for end of wars for thousands of years, and there's still wars. You know, we've got to come to grips with this and understand what it is that we've wrought in the world. All this stuff that's happening in the world now that people are so concerned about. And justifiably so, because our existence is at stake. But what is it that we must do now that is not repeating what we did for thousands of years? You know, I'm not unique. You know, everybody's got these abilities. And all we have to do is just clear out the clutter that is in our minds. But doing that is very difficult for most people.
And this is, you know, the loss of that immediacy of being with nature, being with the animals, being with the elements, being with, you know, the great roaring sound of the ocean that you grew up with, you know, that you feel is always rocking you inside. At least that's my feeling. It's like I carry that ocean sound inside me. And I can go into that and it will bring me back into my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mother Earth is there to help us.
Exactly.
And we're being helped in so many different ways that we don't understand. You know, for example, this pandemic.
Yes.
That the world is so uptight about, you know, it's Mother Earth's doing. Yes. That this creature, this virus has come into being. And it's because we have violated animals of all kinds. Yes. We're still violating, even in Western society where we have domesticated animals and the way we treat them in preparation for food is a gross violation based on the real human being standards. And we must take stock of what we have wrought and what is not working and why isn't it working and how far along in human history has this thing gone on that we need to find a new way.
Yes.
which really, in my mind, is an old way, which is indigenous ways. You know, most people, they pray to a God like it's a Santa Claus God.
Yeah.
You know, please give me this, please give me that. And, you know, help my friend because I need that help for you. I can't do it without you, and
Yeah.
all this thing. And they're very earnest prayers. But, you know, when indigenous people pray, they pray to give thanks because we're already given everything that we need. And we give thanks and gratitude for that. And when we pray with our ancestors, spirit guides, guardian angels, and helpers to help us in doing what it is that we intend, as long as what we intend is in harmony with all life. And that has power in ceremony anywhere in the world. And so what we intend is to get our messages of these indigenous elders throughout the world, spread around the world. And, you know, before we started this, you know, when we had the idea of gathering elders from around the world, it took 6 months from start to finish to actually accomplish having that meeting. And we didn't have any money, and we got the money. We didn't have a film crew. We got 3 volunteer film crews. We didn't have a director. We had an Academy Award winning director volunteer his time. And these are the kinds of things that happen when we are in alignment with what the universe is saying, that we are being supported in the unseen world, as well as the seen world, in terms of what we're going to do. Earth's consciousness is rising.
Yes.
And as it rises, her energy is hitting the heavy stuff in our bodies and bringing it out to the surface for us to deal with. And so it doesn't matter what it is. It's a dark energy that comes out that Mother Earth is helping us push out to make it visible. And the elders are saying, you know, during this time, take nothing personally because everybody's going through something. And I mean, everybody on Mother Earth.
Yeah. 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 I think, you know, what I feel speaking to you now, you know, I feel we're speaking within a field of a beautiful field that is opening up potential, the potential within us.
Yeah.
And that we're held within this field of awakening, within the Mother Earth, who is within the sun, who is within the solar system, within the cosmos of, you know, nests within nests within nests of the great being.
Yes.
And that, yeah. And that reminds me of the way that, you know, you described your childhood and this openness to all these different fields of being that you could sense, and you were moving within them, and they were not fixed, but alive, awake, fluid, emergent all the time. And I get a sense of the beauty of a true human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we need more role models.
We do. Yes.
And people who can speak to this with a knowing, not some assumption or some theory or something brought up from somebody else. We need to have personal experience stories told and told widely.
Yes. It's been absolutely magical talking to you, Ilarion. I'm so grateful. I just want to voice my appreciation and the beautiful clothing, which I know holds many stories.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I'm just a messenger.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody can do what I have done in my life and I'm doing now. I'm sharing with you as a way of sharing my gift from my heart to the world. Anybody can do this. Now, it may not be public speaking. It might be something about, taking an old way that's destroying something and creating something new out of it that is more in harmony with the universe. I mean, we don't know what incredible gifts are there in everybody's hearts that we need now.